Affect Autism in its 10th year of providing free supportive content for your DIR journey.
All of Affect Autism's podcasts are produced and edited by Daria Brown. Please note that the views expressed during all episodes are solely those of the individuals involved, do not constitute educational or medical advice, and do not necessarily reflect the views of Affect Autism, Daria Brown, nor ICDL and associated parties. Listeners should consult with professionals familiar with their individual circumstances for specific support.
You're listening to the We Chose Play podcast from Affect Autism, where affect is the #1 tool we use in supporting development through playful interactions. Welcome back, listeners. This episode's guest is Tammy Bishop, who is an occupational therapist. She's been an occupational therapist since 1999 in Florida. She operates a service called Bicycle Lessons for All, where she teaches autistic kids and individuals of all abilities to ride a bicycle. We met in a Praxis course at the Star Institute recently, and I liked the idea of including a Floortime-adjacent topic on the podcast. So welcome, Tammy.
Thank you, Daria. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I love that you're in your bicycle gear for the podcast. Now, I know that a lot of autistic kids struggle with riding bicycles, especially if they have dyspraxia, like my son. So we'll get into that going forward. I'm super interested to hear any tips you have. But tell us, how did this Bicycles for All get started? Maybe tell us a little bit about your occupational therapy career.
Sure. So I graduated from University of Alabama in Birmingham back in 1999 and worked with children ever since in various settings: early intervention, public schools, private schools, clinics. And my husband and I moved to Florida in 2008 for his job. And so basically got set up down here doing the same thing. And in 2013 approximately, I felt like because I was riding a bike more often, because in Florida you can pretty much ride every single day, it just kind of got into my brain like, you know what? All my clients should know how to ride a bike. It's a great life skill. It's great for being able to get out into the community and doing something fairly typical. Because a lot of my clients, especially my autistic clients, their lives are so full of therapy and special needs services and things like that. So being able to go for a bike ride with your family in the community can feel so typical. Do you know what I mean? And families really appreciate that. So I just started teaching all my clients how to ride a bike. And then what I discovered is they were learning in a pattern that was pretty much the same, from client to client. And I then started to break down the task of riding a bike, because that's what we do in occupational therapy. It's called activity analysis. And so I broke it down into steps based on how my clients were learning. And then 2018, I thought, if my system, works with my clients, I'm curious if it would work with other ages and abilities. And so I put it out to the general public. Got a few people interested, and because I was a full-time occupational therapist, I didn't have a lot of time to spend on the bicycle lesson business. So it was kind of like a side thing I did. It was a lot of fun, but it was something I couldn't really move forward with and grow it. In 2024, so last year, the end of the year, I had a moment where I felt like I need to focus on what I was doing. I had so many things going on. I was running 3 businesses. And in my occupational therapy business, I was doing feeding therapy, sensory motor therapy, life skills. And so in the bicycle business. And so I just felt really discombobulated. And so I asked myself, what brings me joy? What do I love doing with my clients? And it was the biking. So I made the decision in October 2024 that I would dedicate my time and my effort to only bicycle lessons. And so from that point on, I haven't looked back, and I'm having so much fun. And it's just, so I've self-published a book. I have an online course. So people who don't live close enough to have in-person lessons can still access my system of steps. So it's super exciting. I love it.
That's so fun. Yeah. And it's great that you can make that decision to do that. And there's the need is there in Florida, probably more so than somewhere like Toronto.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. And then, I have to say I'm blessed, because without my husband, I wouldn't be able to do this, because it's not a full-time job. There's just not, there's a need, but it's not a full-time need.
I can remember when my son was in the rehabilitation hospital after his brain inflammation, they had this, occupational therapy tricycle, and he was 2.5, and he sat on it with a helmet, and it sort of had a handle on the back. The occupational therapist pushed him along and was trying to get him to pedal. And, his feet were inside, whatever those straps are on the pedals. And, I don't know that he was pushing his legs or knew how to do that yet. And over the years, it was definitely a struggle. And eventually he was riding a two-wheel bicycle with training wheels. And that was long before COVID. And since COVID, we haven't done anything. But I will say that I had done this podcast in 2019. So that's probably the last time my son was on any kind of bicycle. He had this big wheel of some kind. I know they were called big wheels when I was little, but whatever this thing is called, actually, it did have a specific name. I can't remember it now. We still have it. It's still in the garage. He could barely reach the pedals, but now he's almost 16 and he's, 5'6". So he could definitely reach it now. And I've been thinking about pulling it back out again because he loved racing along this path in the park. And that's the last time we've done anything. He's never ridden a bicycle without training wheels. So tell me about the steps that you take with autistic children or children with motor challenges who have a hard time either, first of all, pedaling and pushing with enough force, and then also being able to balance the bicycle. I imagine there's like a number of steps that happen over weeks before you get to the final stage of riding a bicycle. Not even to mention all the safety issues of riding a bicycle, because even if you can ride the bicycle, that's just the first step. What about if cars are coming and where you are and you don't want to crash into people and on and on?
Yes, yes. So I'm going to use an example. There's a young man that I taught how to ride, and we started when he was 15, and he wasn't able to sit on the seat for more than 5 seconds. So part of his OT session was every single week he would sit on the seat, and we would increase that amount of time. And so from a therapist point of view, I was trying to make it fun and try to increase. It's what we OTs call the just right challenge. It's kind of, I don't want to say pushing the child, but you're encouraging progress without them feeling like they're being pushed. So we were always trying to find that just right challenge, trying to increase the amount of time that he could sit on the seat. And that took weeks. Once he was able to sit on the seat, then we started working on coasting. Could he take a couple steps and then pick up his feet while the bike still rolled? So what I normally do for all my students is take off the pedals, and we turn whichever bike they're using into a balance bike. So whether it's my bike, their bike, whether it's a kid's bike, an adult bike, I do the same thing for everybody. So the pedals come off so that we can walk the bike and try to coast, meaning they take a couple of steps, build up a little bit of speed, pick up their feet, and try to use their lateral muscles for balance, because all students, when they start, are using their feet for balance. So if the bike starts to tilt, they put that foot out. When the bike starts to tilt, they put that foot out. And what I'm trying to get them to do is use their body so that their feet don't have to do anything but just stay up. And so that took a while. Once he was able to coast a decent distance, then I put one pedal on, and we basically work from the beginning again, where one foot's on the pedal, the other foot takes steps, and then he tries to lift that foot and coast. Because that's what most people do to get the bike started, build up a little bit of speed, get their balance, and then pop that second foot onto the pedal. And then when they can balance for a good amount of time, a good distance, then I know they're ready for that second pedal. So then we put the second pedal on, they take their steps, they get their balance, and then they pop their foot on the pedal, and the next thing you know, they're able to pedal. So it depends. This time frame depends on the child's balance and coordination. I've worked with some autistics who learned in 2 to 3 lessons. I've had other autistics, for example, like the 15-year-old boy, where I think it took him maybe 6 months to learn. So weekly lessons or sessions, working on biking for, it started out pretty quick or for a short amount of time. But then as we got more and more into his being able to follow through with more of the activities, it was a good 6 months of learning. So, but he's awesome. And on my YouTube channel, there's a short of him actually riding his bike. We're at the mall, and he and I are just riding along. It's awesome. It's so awesome. And so he's super excited about it. His parents were super excited about it. And then we generalized it to his home environment. So once he was done learning with me, then we took it to his house so that he could learn to ride in his neighborhood.
Okay, so this is confusing to me because I'm thinking that the first step would be to pedal so that you know how much pressure to put on the feet with training wheels, or like the big wheel that I showed the picture of my son on.
Hmm. That's absolutely fine. So, in fact, just recently I had a family um, whose child, it's a little guy, he's 4, and I told them, I said, at home, because his bike's too big for him, go ahead and have him practice pedaling with his training wheels. Because once the training wheels come off, the bike can be too tall for the child, even with the seat all the way down. And so, what I'll recommend is no, keep the training wheels on because your child can practice that pedaling piece. That's always a great help. But a lot of my students come to me without having had practice pedaling. And for most of them, it's kind of intuitive. For those who it's not intuitive, then I pretty much do hand over foot while they're moving and try to like kind of, basically teach their body this is what it should be doing. Um, but no, really, the first thing I'm trying to work on is building that core balance because all students, whether they are autistic or not, even adults, they come in there and those muscles are not helping with balance. And so we have to basically train their body what to do and train the brain to trust that these muscles are going to keep you safe.
Right, right. Okay, so my next question then would be I'm guessing that most of the people that come to you who, let's say, have motor challenges or autistic people, they might be very invested in learning how to ride a bike. But there might be other people who it's the parents that want their kids to learn how to ride the bike, and maybe they're not so excited to be there. So, how are you maintaining their interest? Like in floor time, we talk about following the child's lead, which means their interests, their emotional intent, matching that where, matching them where they're at in their affective state and everything like that.
Hmm. So I incorporate games into all of the lessons. And even with the older kids, I have games that I use basically based on the age of the child. So for the really young kids, I have very simple games. And those games are, well, one, for us to have fun, but two, also to kind of distract them from the work that they're doing so that they don't realize how hard they're working, right? And so it becomes more about the game and less about the biking. And they don't even realize how hard they're working. And then for the older kids, I have older kid games. We do trivia, hangman, which is a letter guessing game. And I would say back to your point about some kids could be really invested in it. I would say most are not. It's the
Okay.
parents. The parents want their children to learn. And so it makes it tough on my part, but I'm okay with it, to convince the child like this is going to be fun because they show up, they have no idea what to expect, right? So they're anxious about I'm doing what? Like I've had some families bring their child and not tell them where they're going because they were afraid of the reaction. They were afraid the child wouldn't get in the car. So um, I basically I tell the child, you're going to realize probably 10 to 15 minutes into this first lesson that it's not as difficult and scary as you thought it was going to be because they anticipate, and especially if they've had experience being pushed on a bike and then they fall, it's been a traumatic past with biking. Do you know what I mean? And so I really have to just remind them this is going to be fine. Like falling's not part of our lesson. Your body's main job is to protect you, and it's going to do a great job doing it. So they do. After like 15 minutes, they're like, "Oh, okay, this isn't so bad." So
Now, what about kids with sensory challenges who just don't want to wear a helmet?
in the state of Florida, it's a law for children 16 and under to wear a helmet. And so I'll tell the family that, I'll tell the child that, and then I just leave it up to the parent. I'm like, if you're okay with, so and so not using a helmet, that's totally fine with me. I want to respect your wishes. And what I try to do is convince them to have to wear the helmet. And if they absolutely refuse, that's when I'll go into the spiel about the law and it's mom and dad's choice and that kind of thing. Um, he didn't want to wear a helmet, and I said, "Uh-oh, no bike," or so no helmet, no bike. And then he was like, "Oh, okay," and popped the helmet on because he wanted to ride. He'd gotten to the point where he was doing really well riding, and so I gave him the choice. You know what I mean? And so if he had still pushed that he didn't want the helmet, then we would have worked around that.
Yeah, I know my son does not like anything touching his head, but he is okay if it's specific reasons for a temporary period or something like that. And it's such a good source of exercise too, because I know a lot of our kids, when they don't have the coordination and balance, they tend to not do sports and things that are hard for them.
Right.
And then you start to see the little tummies starting and extra weight being put on. So it's a wonderful form of exercise too.
Yep.
But let's go to that next step is where do you bicycle that's safe? Because I know even with my son on that picture I showed earlier, I brought him to that park, but he went so fast and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to run and keep up with him. I couldn't. And then if there's like a family with little kids or walking a dog, I don't know if he's going to like race by and hit them by accident or what. So I've been way too scared and haven't really, and then it was COVID and everything, and then just never bothered to figure out a place where we could actually go bike. Even though there are numbers of trails around here, still, like, I don't feel confident that, like, unless I have a bike too and we're biking together, which I guess I should get one. I haven't had a bike in years, but talk me into getting a bike and getting me and my son biking again, Tammy.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. So for practicing, you had mentioned about like locations, and really the bigger the space, the better, and with as little traffic as possible and obstacles and things like that. I'm really lucky because there is a shopping mall close to me that is vacant. Parts of it are vacant. And so the parking lot, in front of the vacant businesses is free of traffic. And I found this perfect location. Before that, I was traveling to empty parking lots at elementary schools, middle schools, office buildings, other shopping malls, any place that had an area that was large and as safe as possible, free of traffic and obstacles and things like that. Um, Sidewalks and trails, I often don't recommend, even for kids who do know how to ride a bike but are new to riding, because the narrower the path, the more difficult it is to control the bike, right? So for learning, definitely larger open spaces work. For getting you and your son back into riding, um, I would I would, if you could, try to find someone close to you and maybe have some lessons and see, if he could get going on a two-wheeled bike. Something else that came to mind when you were chatting is I thought, what about a tandem or tandem bike?
That just
Right?
popped into my mind too. I've seen that where
Mhm.
there's two people sitting and honestly, I would feel safest doing that because of course then excuse me, he's attached to me.
So the tandem bike might be a nice option because you're pretty much balancing the bike, right? But he still can pedal and he still has handlebars, even though he's not steering. So it can feel very much to him like he's riding a
So he
bike.
has to balance. But
He
because he's now
does.
bigger than me, if he jerked or something, it could knock us both over. That brings me to another question.
Mhm.
Knee pads, elbow pads, helmets, and all that stuff. We talked a little bit about helmets, but how
Right.
much of your lessons involves bicycle safety well, physical safety, and then we haven't even talked about traffic safety yet.
I leave that up to the child. So the parents will bring the pads and they'll ask their child, "Do you want your elbow pads or knee pads?" I don't recommend the hand, like the wrist guards,
Oh,
because they get in the way of the handles for the biking, and so they can't hold on well. And I tell the kids, you probably won't need your pad, but if you feel safer wearing that, please do. So I always, yeah, I don't try to convince the kids to do something that they're afraid of.
but at
You
the
know,
same time, they might not realize the reason for wearing them, and if they skin their knee really bad, then they might really have preferred the padding.
I have discovered through lessons there is a way that when kids do fall, it's usually the same cause, and it's from the front wheel turning too much.
Mm.
And what happens is when it turns too much, it kind of it pushes them down onto the ground. And so if I see that a student is the word I'm looking for, if I see that they tend to do that more frequently than other students, then I give them the warning, like, listen, don't let your bike tire turn too much because it will make you fall. Then when it does happen, I'll just say, see, that's what happens when your wheel turns too much. It throws you down on the ground. So then I tell them, if you can, when you come to a stop, try to keep that wheel straight as possible. But really, back to the pads, I don't require them, but the kids are welcome to wear whatever they want.
That can be another sensory issue for some kids, for sure. Obviously, if the children are young, they're probably biking with their parents and all of that. But for someone like the 15-year-old, how does that work with getting on the road eventually?
Yep. So there are two brothers that I work with. Both are autistic, one speaking, one non-speaking. And I taught them many years ago when they were younger, so probably early teens. And they're now 21 and 20, and we go out on the roads. We go on bike trails. And so what I do is when I'm with them, we work on all of the road rules. We work on trail etiquette. For example, for the brother who speaks, he is now able to, and he's better at it than I am, that when we're passing someone, so if someone's walking on the trail and we're riding coming up behind them, as we pass on their left, he'll say, on your left, because it's just a courtesy to let someone know that you're passing them so that they don't accidentally step into your path and there's a collision. We work on following stop signs, stopping, looking both ways. For the non-speaking brother, he has a really, really hard time with the stop signs because we've been doing it for years now. And there have been times where I think, well, I'm just not going to say anything and see if he can do it on his own. And he doesn't. It's as if he doesn't even see it. So for kids who have a tough time controlling their body, we, parents, adults, chaperones need to be aware that there can be times when, even though they have done it a million times, there can be that moment, or it can be more consistent, that they don't follow safe, road rules. So I am always on guard with him because, even just getting too close to someone as we're passing, his older brother, the one who speaks, he knows. It's kind of like he understands the appropriate distance when you're passing someone, right? You don't want to be too close because then that feels really intrusive, right, to the other person.
Or your pedals could catch.
Exactly. Or just, being so close to someone, it's almost, I think some people see it or feel it as like an aggressive behavior. And these are big kids. They're young adults, you know what I mean? So they're big boys. And so I don't want anyone thinking like, hey, and giving him a hard time. So I have to tell him, come over here all the way over this way. So if you're with an autistic who has a hard time controlling their body and doing certain things consistently, it's our job to really make sure that they're safe. And there's no reason why they can't be on the road and on trails. It requires us to be more alert on, letting them know, oh, there's people up ahead. We got to pass them, and just helping them. And it works out great. And the speaking brother, in fact, yesterday, we were able to generalize the road rules that we had been learning on the bike to him now driving the family golf cart. So it was super cool. And it was amazing because I could see things that he learned while riding a bike, he was doing while he was driving. So it was really awesome. So yes. But we have to be on alert, even if we feel pretty secure that they've learned this a million times, they're going to get it. I don't feel comfortable just kind of sitting back and letting it go. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes. Yeah, well, you've given me lots to think about here, getting me and my son back on bikes. Because I did a couple of mini triathlons, in my 20s years ago. And that's probably the last time I rode a bike.
You're going to love it. When you get back on, it's like, I miss this. Like this.
Oh, I loved it. I loved riding my bike as a kid. I had a little, black and blue bike that I called the bruise bike because it was the color of bruises. And it was my favorite thing. And, those horns. And yeah, I loved riding it around the neighborhood. And I remember getting my first 5-speed because I was too tiny for a 10-speed. I was like a super tiny kid. And yeah, and then just always riding my bike around. And then I just haven't since because I just figure like I drive. So, and I'm also a scaredy cat, anyone who knows me. So I'm not going to go compete with the drivers that are often very much in a hurry and entitled. So I don't want to compete with that. But yeah, in terms of a park, a trail, a big empty parking lot, things like that,
Yes.
especially on the weekend, if things are closed after a certain time on a Sunday,
Exactly.
going out in the summer when it doesn't get dark till 9:30 p.m., it's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other things that we haven't brought up that you want to highlight?
I would say, I don't know how it is in Canada, but here in Florida, we have a state scholarship that families can use for enrichment and therapy activities. And so here, bicycle lessons is covered under that scholarship for children who have unique abilities, and also for kids who are homeschooled. So there's a scholarship for them as well.
There's different sources of funding depending on what state and province you're in. We definitely have funding that would cover something like that as well in Ontario. But yeah, it varies. It varies.
Yep. And the Down Syndrome Association hosts a 1 week bicycle course here in Orlando in the summer that's open to not just children with Down syndrome, but unique abilities. But it's a week long. So just kind of doing a bicycle lessons near me search on Google, families may be able to find someone locally. And if not, they can, check out my book. They can check out, I have the online course on OutSchool.
So I'm sharing your website now for those that are listening on audio. The website is Tammy, Tammy Bishop, Bishop.com. And right on the homepage, you see a picture of her book.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find out all the information. There's videos here of kids riding.
Mm-hmm.
And she also has Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, bicycle lessons for the number 4, all, ALL. And you can check out all her social media, which I will link to in the blog post at affectautism.com with this podcast. So thank you so much, Tammy. It was wonderful to hear about this. And, I'm going to use this as a motivator to think about ways to get my son outside again and pedaling. And maybe we will start again with that big wheel or whatever it's called that he has now that his body fits it better. Figure out places to do that where I know he'll be safe. Maybe that's a first step.
Well, yes, good luck finding a spot for you and your son to learn.
Thank you so much. And thanks for being on the podcast.
I appreciate your having me. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for listening. This episode of We Chose Play was made possible with the generous financial support of Affect Autism's members at patreon.com/affectautism and of the International Council on Development and Learning, ICDL.com. If you liked this episode, please share it with someone, like and subscribe, sign up for the newsletter at affectautism.com, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Instagram. Find out more at affectautism.com.
Until next time, here's to choosing play and experiencing joy every day.
My new book is now available for purchase at your preferred online bookseller, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and others. We Chose Play, Raising an Autistic Child to Thrive and Feel Understood, chronicles my floor time journey with my son. I outline my understanding of the early functional, emotional, developmental capacities and describe how the autistic experience of each varies with examples. I guide parents through implementing their own floor time approach at home, with or without expensive therapies and services, and talk about the process of personal growth one experiences along the journey. I hope you'll check it out and let me know your thoughts about it. Learn more at affectautism.com/we chose play, all one word.